Hi folks, I'm Fred, this is Nini, and in this video we're going to compare two very different kinds of university systems.
So we both spent some time studying at the University of Exeter, which is in England, and I'm currently on my year abroad studying literature at the University of Burgundy, which is in France.
And I'm doing a master's degree in linguistics at the University of Brussels, which is in Belgium. So the two systems we're going to compare are British universities on the one hand, and on the other hand a more traditional kind of European universities like those of France, Belgium, Italy and other European countries. I think there's really a massive difference between British students on the one hand and, well, let's say French students on the other hand. To summarize, let's just say that British students are a lot more involved in whatever they're doing.
The main difference is in British universities, there's a very long selection process to see who can study at a particular university. You have to reach a particular level of marks in your final year. You need to write a personal statement saying why you want to study a particular subject. Whereas in France and in some other European countries, all you have to do is pay a minimal fee to study at a university right after high school.
Yeah, and there's also the price. I mean, British universities are really expensive. So let's say that it's not something people take for granted in Britain, whereas in, well, many European countries where universities are sometimes completely free or quite cheap, going there doesn't really feel like a huge privilege.
And if you just take one lecture at each university, it's really obvious that students at a British university in general tend to be more motivated about what they're studying because of all these reasons. For example, if you sit through a 1-hour lecture in a British university, all the students stop talking as soon as the professor walks in or starts giving his lecture. You can tell that British students in general seem to take it as some kind of privilege, whereas here you just feel like you're sitting in a school or in some kind of class where no one seems to be interested in the subject, because a lot of people here talk over the teacher, don't take notes or sleep through, which is not something you'd find typical of a British lecture. So I would say I was really overwhelmed by the number of facilities I got in England as soon as I started university there. The first thing I really noticed was the library, because at least in Exeter and in many other British universities, the library is open 24 hours every day and you can use it anytime. You can even sleep there if you have a big assignment coming up. And it's really, really helpful to always have so many resources available for you.
Yeah, and everything is, in general, like every building is extremely clean. And also, again, like getting back to the students, I think everyone, because they're paying a lot and also they feel like they did a lot to deserve this, and also they're kind of pampered by their university. They don't feel like, for example, you don't see graffitis or stuff like that. Everyone is very respectful, respecting the material. So again, this is just much better.
I would say in general, technology is used much more frequently in British universities. You have apps for everything at the university. You can see which rooms are free. You can get your timetable. I would go as far as to say that they spoon feed you a little bit. You're a bit pampered.
Definitely.
But I can't complain. Where, just to compare, here in France, you have to go down to the university, go to the bulletin board, physically see a paper version of your timetable, and take a picture of it on your smartphone to know what you're doing.
In my university, we often had, and we still have sometimes, lessons at 8 in the morning, for example, or very late at night. In British universities, I mean, when this happens, when you have a lesson at 8, this is considered as something harsh. And for example, I had my flatmate, the French flatmates. He had, like, for some reason, 3 times a week he had a lesson starting at 8 or something, and the university, they actually apologized for this. Like, they sent him a personal email, and he got actually like a gift in compensation for this. So he got, like, I think £20 or something.
Oh, he got access to like a free cup of coffee or something.
Yeah, or something like that that he could spend or on the campus. So I think that really illustrates the massive difference
they really
there is.
they don't want to annoy the students.
I mean, to summarize, I'd say that in Britain, students are like clients. They're customers, and the university is there to satisfy them. You have to get what you're paying for. Whereas in France, it's more like in school. Actually, they're more like they're here to educate you, and you have to thank them.
Yeah,
so it's completely. It's not the same kind of relationship.
Yeah, I think in France, everyone still kind of talks down to you, not in a mean way, but in a way as if they know that they are superior to you and you are still a child learning things. Yeah. Whereas in England, you are just an adult who's paying for a service.
Exactly, precisely. That's, yeah. again, there's a massive difference when it comes to the teaching style, in these universities. So in France and other countries like in Europe, most courses are lecture based, while in England it's more seminar based. So the idea is that in universities like French universities, you're mostly just listening to the teacher, going to lectures, taking notes, studying it, repeating it. Yeah.
Whereas seminars tend to be smaller groups of students, let's say maximum 15 students sitting with the professor, and the difference is the students also voice their opinions a lot about what they have studied that week. And
it's actually more than that. They don't also express their opinions. Like the students are literally making the course, and by literally I mean literally. So the professor is just there to kind of supervise the discussion, so they know they have an idea of what they want us to talk about. Generally, we have a list of questions to answer or something like that, something to prepare.
Sometimes that depends.
Like in many seminars, like one group has to prepare one thing each week or something, or one student has to present something, and then the idea is that we have to talk about something, but the teacher doesn't have anything particular to say. He's going to, or he or she is going to intervene only when it's necessary. And only when they feel like
sometimes
they're missing,
just throwing in a guiding word or a question.
Exactly,
or something.
But the idea is that we have to find the answers ourselves and make our own opinion.
Yeah, really. And it's not just like you discuss it and then you forget what you have discussed. Seminars often make up the basis for what you write in your assessment, which we'll discuss a bit later. But in French universities, it's more like you take in the teacher's opinion, you don't question it, and you just repeat it in the assessment.
Yeah, I mean, officially, they often tell you things like, oh, it's really important to, have your own opinion, think about it, don't just but in reality, like concretely, we all know that what they're expecting you to do is mostly repeating what has been said. And I mean, they're going to deny it, trust me. Like, if you talk to them, they're going to be like, no, what are you talking about? But, honestly, like, the truth is that, of course, they're going to be pleased if they see that you've been doing some more research, or if you have, like, really strong arguments. But they're not really expecting you to come up with something completely new. And they're going to be really pissed, generally, if you don't mention anything that has been said in the, during the course. Like, it's really important to remember what the professor has said. Whereas in England, like, no one cares, the teacher is just there to help you, basically.
Definitely. And I would say, in a way, seminars are really motivating because you really feel like your opinion matters and you're not just taking down what other people have said. You get to really voice what you want to say. And also, it encourages people to participate more and get actively involved in what they're studying. Whereas here, you just passively listen, write things down, and memorize it. So it's very different.
And another big difference is the way the program is organized. In British universities, the system is basically based on modules. So you can take, actually the idea is that you're completely free, basically. So you choose a subject, of course, like literature or something, but then you can combine courses pretty much the way you want. You don't really have any kind of fixed program. Sometimes you have, a few compulsory courses, but it's quite, like, most of the courses you get are completely based on your own choice, and each student has a completely different program, so it's not like everyone studying this kind of subject has the same program. So
Whereas in France and in other countries, you just choose your subject, like if you choose literature, and you are given a set of courses that you must follow. So you have a much broader knowledge about the context of what you're studying and about certain periods and things like that, which you don't necessarily get with the module because it's far more specialized.
I'd say that's actually one positive point, when it comes to the French system or, these universities. Since you get, a lot of compulsory courses, at least everyone has a common basis, and you get a lot more, many more general courses about, for example, literature. You're going to get a course about the general history of what you're studying. For example, in my university, everyone studying the humanities department gets one compulsory course about the history of Western philosophy, Western history, and history of arts, which doesn't really happen in many British universities. You kind of choose. So in a way, it's great that you're free, but on the other hand, sometimes you're kind of like, when you're just starting to study a subject, you're not an expert. You're not necessarily aware that there are things that you should really know. So I think sometimes it's really good to have one huge general course covering the all the most important things. So on that point, I'd say that the ideal thing would probably be a combination of the two. So like a lot of a lot of freedom, but on the other hand, at the same time, a a strong basis for everyone, especially during the first year.
Yeah, so you can get a good foundation, but also choose what you want to study within your subject. Also, going back to the use of technology, which we've already briefly discussed, it also comes into the way things are taught at British universities. For example, in Exeter at least, all the lectures were recorded, and you could easily access the Exeter website and get all the recordings and all the PowerPoints the professors use with the special documents and things like that, references. So it was really useful to, for example, revise for exams or use them in your essays. And I think this kind of takes us back to the fact that students are really clients in the UK, because even if you don't do what you're supposed to do, which is go to the classes, you still have access to everything you paid for.
Like in a university like French university, you're going to be judged for not going to the course, and it's like you deserve to be kind of punished, or you don't get help because you didn't go there. Whereas in a British university, no matter what you do, you still get what you're paying for. Exactly.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So a big difference between British universities and French universities is in the former, you really need to write lots of essays throughout the year to show that you know what about your subject and about the different modules you're doing. So usually each module gives you a special essay to write just for them, and then you are marked on that. And then another 50% is the exam you do at the end of the year.
So actually the British system is more essay based, whereas in the French university it's all more exam based. It's not just about the way you're assessed, but also how frequently you're assessed. In many European universities, you can afford not to do anything throughout the year, and then you're assessed at the very end of the first term or something. I mean, that's especially the case in Belgium, at least. I don't know about the rest. But whereas in English universities, you're constantly asked to read a lot of things and talk about it by yourself. So I think both systems have advantages and disadvantages. The great thing with essays is that you really get, again, you're much more involved in what you're doing, and you get to produce something completely new and original.
You really just take what you love from the course. And in the UK, essay questions are often very general, very open, so you can choose which books you want to write on. Of course, something done in the course, but still a lot of choice, and then you can go in any direction you like. So you really feel like you are making the course and you are getting what you want from it.
Yeah, the only problem is that on the other hand, when you're writing an essay, you can kind of maybe cheat is not the right word, but let's say that even
it's
if
an easy way out sometimes.
Yeah, because even if you haven't followed the course very thoroughly, I mean, it depends on the subject, but sometimes you can still get away by just doing a lot of research at the very last minute and writing on one specific topic while completely forgetting about the rest. In my university, for example, we have exams for pretty much everything, well, especially during the bachelor's degree, so you really have to know everything, and that's the massive difference. You don't get to just write about one thing and and it's not like they don't trust you. They don't really let you get away with just having the course and then do whatever you want with it. It's like
true.
You have to remember everything, and in a way it's good, because at least it guarantees that you have a that what has been learned.
I would say, in a way, even though this is more challenging and you feel more kind of restricted in a way, you really get everything you could out of the course, because you have to retain everything until you're done with the exam, and you revise it a lot more than you would in England in most cases.
Yeah, even though sometimes, of course, again, it's all a matter of balance. I mean, I think in certain cases I find it kind of silly, because what you're asked to remember sometimes is you're asked to remember tiny details that no one cares about. So it sometimes feel like you're just, again, like a schoolboy asked to show that he's been following the course, and everyone knows that no matter what you do, you're going to forget about a lot of things anyway. So sometimes I think it makes sense to just let it go. I mean,
if people choose what they write in their essays, I still remember everything I've written for all my essays since the first year, but if I have to just learn something by heart for an exam, chances are I'll forget it a few months later.
That's the thing. Like, when you study for an exam, you have to remember everything. There are chances that in the end, if you don't really like what you have been doing, you're going to forget everything and not remember anything. When you're writing an essay, you might have forgotten a lot of things, but at least since you've been really involved into writing your essay and personal thing, at least you get something out of it. So I think it depends on the course. Like, sometimes, especially for general courses, like history or philosophy, or like very broad subjects like this, I mean, it can be good to have an exam to show that you really have you know the basis. But when it comes to more specific kinds of subjects, I think the English system can be better, because I think it makes more sense to just take what you like out of it. And
There's also a massive difference in the way we are marked at each of these universities, because British universities always give you a percentage, and then you have rankings like first rank and then second but higher rank and then second but lower rank, and it's just very different. Whereas here it's a bit more straightforward. You're just marked on 20 generally at all universities.
Well, that's a French thing. I think it really depends.
Okay.
In certain universities, it might be out of 10. I mean, in my university, out of 20. But yeah, it
But
really
you're
depends
given
on
like
the
a
country.
more like numeric thing.
Yeah, I think the British system doesn't make a lot of sense. Like the marking system,
Especially
because
for
it's-
humanities students.
Yeah, I don't know about the rest, but I mean, like because of first, so the best grade is anything over 70. And honestly, 70 is quite low. Like you can what about 80? What about 90? What about 100? So that means that have you ever met someone who got more than 80?
I've never met someone who got 80.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's kind of like 75 is pretty
75
much
is probably,
the best you can get, and maybe you can kind of get to 80 if you're like a genius.
Yeah.
But why 80? You know,
Why
I
can't
mean,
you get to
to
100?
me, it makes a lot more sense to have a system in which 100 is like perfect, and of course, depending on the subject, in your case, you're studying literature, so getting 100% for literature is kind of questionable. But when it comes to more like scientific subjects, like most
Physics.
linguistics courses, I mean, when you've done when it's just perfect, I mean, you just get 100, and that makes a lot more sense, Also, in England, you have to get 40% in order to pass,
yeah.
Which, why 40 and why not 50? Why not? I think the marking in England is kind of questionable, but it's interesting.
Also, another difference in assessment is in England, mostly you submit your work anonymously because you submit it through an online thing.
That's a very important point.
Where you just give your candidate number, but any of the professors in your department can mark your essay, and no one knows who you are. So you are really just marked on the work you're doing. Whereas here, your name is a very prominent thing on every paper you submit. And if a teacher knows you, they tend to I think even subconsciously they associate it with the kind of student you are, and it might influence their marking. Who knows?
And also sometimes marks are displayed publicly, like for everyone to see in certain places, so you get to see what everyone gets, and it can be kind of embarrassing. It can be motivating. You really don't.
That really depends on what kind of student you are.
Yeah, of course, but at least let's say that the anonymous system is that it's completely well, maybe not completely objective, because at least teachers are not influenced by who you are, so that's a great point. And in a way, it's also less stressful, because you know that your relationship with the teacher is not going to change based on what kind of work you're doing. So it's like you always have a chance to improve. Like even if you've been doing shit, I mean, you know that the next day the teacher is going to see you, and he won't know or she won't know who's been doing this, like who's been submitting this shitty essay, and you can always pretend that it wasn't you. Because in more traditional kinds of universities, if you start having bad marks, with a professor, etc., and he knows you and recognizes you, he starts identifying you as a bad student, and your relationship with the professor can get worse and worse, and you're less motivated.
Absolutely,
and it can get really difficult. Whereas in a British university, at least you can always change, and you always get a chance to prove
Fresh
that
starts.
exactly.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
Alright, so that's the end of our video. We hope you found it entertaining, and we hope you found it interesting to learn about all these differences. Please subscribe to Fred's channel, and please share this video if you liked it, and his other videos, because he has lots of useful ones. Also, if you want to watch a video about his stay in England as an international student, just click over here. It's a really funny one. And yeah, see you next time.
See you.